broadcast has commenced.
Hi Emma, the stream is now live.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet on Monday the 8th of February 2021. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings, and these are as follows. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak by raising your hand. When asked to vote, please raise your hand. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting and mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Members may wish to consider turning off their video feed if there is interference on their connection to this meeting. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between speakers hearing you and other attendants hearing on your communication. Please quote the relevant page or paragraph number when referring to a document. There is no private items for this meeting. However, members are reminded, should we need to move into private session, it is their responsibility to make sure their venue and connection is private. If you lose connection at any point, please try to rejoin the meeting as soon as possible and I would readmit you. Please use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for point of order. The chat function is subject to the rules of subject to the access to information rules and the regimes FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. To assist with managing the chat function for this meeting, the agenda items will be placed in the chat function to act as a marker. The members of the Cabinet are Councillor Graham Butland, David Bebb, Kevin Bowers, Tom Cunningham, John McKee, Frankie Ritchie, Wendy Schmidt, Gabrielle Spray and Peter Tattersley. Other members in attendance are at the invitation of the leader, and these include Councillor James Abbott, Mrs Jackie Pell, David Mann, Mrs Mary Cunningham, Mrs Diana Garrett. These members may participate in the debate but cannot vote. There are officers in attendance and these are identified with the prefix of officer. All councillors are identified with the prefix of CLLR. There is a governance officer who will be taking the meetings for this meeting, and my name is Emma Wisby. I'm the meeting facilitator. This evening, Chairman, we have received apologies from Councillor Frankie Ritchie. I can confirm the meeting is quorum and may proceed. I now hand over to Chairman, Councillor Graham Butland. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Braintree Cabinet. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Ritchie, who's not too well at the moment. Nothing to do with COVID, I hasten to add, but not too well this evening. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that anyone has? Not seeing any hands, so I'll take that as a no. Right, thank you. Move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting to approve as a correct record the meetings of the meeting of Cabinet held on the 23rd of November. They have been circulated. Is there agreement that they are a true copy? You could show by hand if you're happy with that. That is unanimous. Yes, thank you very much. Takes us to item 4, public question time. There are no members of the public present who wish to put questions this evening. So we go on to item 5, the finance and performance management. And one of the main items on the agenda tonight, the Council Budget and Council Tax 2021 and the Medium-Term Financial Strategy 21-22 to 24-25. Before I ask Councillor Bebb to speak to this paper, members will be aware that there are some 123 pages. I did debate whether we would go through it page by page, but decided that I wouldn't go down that line. I'm working on the assumption that given that there was a very good discussion and lengthy discussion at the Performance Management Board last week, that we will cover this at a fairly high level. If there are any members of the public watching, though, who would want to see that meeting of the Performance Management Board is still available on the Council's website if they wish to watch that. So without more ado, I'll ask Councillor David Bebb to introduce the paper. Councillor Bebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right, well, a lot of uncertainty still. The pandemic has caused considerable impact on the Council's business, and with ongoing financial consequences will only become apparent once we are out of the pandemic and budgets might settle down. It's difficult to forecast the impact on services, in particular how the council income generating services will recover and to what extent customer demand may change in the post-COVID period. So as such, no attempt has been made to forecast the impact at detailed budget level. Now, I intended to do this, as you suggested, at a pretty high level. So I'm going to concentrate on the amount of government funding we've been given. I want to say a fair bit about business rates, and then obviously focusing then on the council tax, how it's calculated and what options we have. So starting with government funding, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government made his pronouncement on the 17th of December. And the most important thing as far as we're concerned was the Council's provisional allocation of the settlement funding settlement of £3,486,929. And this consists solely of retained business rates. And the amount is exactly the same as we had last year. The Secretary of State also announced a number of grants, which I won't go through, which we've been receiving in the past. And they include the Homelessness Prevention Grant, the Housing Benefits Administration Subsidy, and so on. And in particular, the Local Council Tax Support Administrative Subsidy. He also, at that time, made a number of announcements in relation to COVID support and a COVID support package for 21-22. In particular, there was a new piece of funding for us, the emergency fund of £686 million, which we weren't quite expecting that. He also confirmed the local council tax support grant and the sales, fees and charges income losses compensation scheme is to be extended in the first 3 months of 21-22. So that's the main headlines as far as the government funding. I want to move on to business rates, and the business rates retention scheme and business rate tax base has been calculated as just over £43 million. It is just proposed that a number of discretionary business rate relief schemes agreed by Cabinet continue as requested by the government. And these actually go back to 2017 and they've been going on ongoing, including rural business relief and local newspapers' office relief and so on. Now, the most important thing as far as we're concerned, last spring there was a humongous allocation of a whole raft of ongoing retail relief schemes from the government, and multi-million. We don't know what's going to happen on those. We're still waiting to hear. However, we did hear some good news last week that the Chancellor said he doesn't want the business rates bills going out until he's made his statement in Parliament on March the 3rd. So it sounds hopeful that something's going to come along in that respect. I want to emphasise that the government undertakes to reimburse councils for the amount of relief granted under these schemes. Now, the final business rates retained is calculated by the Financial Director for 21-22 as £4.96 million, which is 1.49 million above the baseline. The Essex Business Rate Pool, well, I'm pleased to say that all 15 authorities participating in the current scheme wish to continue for the scheme for 21-22, and that scheme will continue, and that provides some additional income for us, but after the financial year ends. The Local Council Tax Support Scheme is proposed that we continue with that, and that has been very valuable, particularly to people who've been able to get many millions, actually. I think it's nearly £9 million we paid out on that. Moving on now to council tax. Council tax collections fund surplus and tax base for the year, as it's calculated by the 30th of November 2020, is 53,721. Now this is 0.65% above what it was from the other year. However, it would have been, in fact, quite a lot more, but we had to take account of the local council tax scheme, the extra claimants on the local council tax support scheme and also an increase in the single person's discount scheme. Now, we're proposing that the existing premiere for empty properties continue. It's only about 212 properties anyway. The idea is not to make money out of this, but to encourage the owners to bring these homes back into habitation. Now, the setting of council tax. Now, the Secretary of State determines the level of increase above which a proposed increase in council tax must be subject to a referendum. For shire and district councils, the referendum principles for 21-22 have been set out at the rate of 2% or up to and including £5. An increase of £4.95 on this council's Band D council tax equates to a percentage increase of 2.68%. Now, when we were working up this budget, we were thinking that with the anticipated budget shortfalls of the next 4 years and the uncertainties of the impact of the impending changes in local government finances in 22-23, it had originally been proposed that this council tax requirement be increased by £3.69 or 2% to £188.37 per annum for a Band D property for 21-22. This equates to a council tax charge for a Band D property for the provision of council tax services of £3.62 per week, an increase of approximately 77 pence per week over the current year. However, a range of other options has been costed and discussed with the Performance Management Board last week. We live in tough times and we're looking at possibly tough decisions to be supportive to our council taxpayers. So more of that in a moment. The original budget proposals as presented in this report represents a shortfall of £122,000 for 21-22, and we propose to address this with a withdrawal from unallocated balances. Shortfalls are projected for the following 3 years of £1,061,769 for the following year, just under 300,000, 292,000 for the following year, and 89,000 for the following year, a total of £1,443,000. For information, at this stage, if we made a 0% increase, if this is considered, then the shortfall becomes £1,657,000. The difference between the two is £214,000. I mention that because that might need to be focused in our minds in the following conversations. So I just want to finish with our balances. We've got, in fact, a prudent but not excessive balance forecast for March the 31st, 2022 of £4,767,000. So I'm going to end at that point before we can have a discussion of the options, but I will be coming back to the 23 recommendations starting on page 11 going to page 13, but we'll come to that when we've had our discussion, Mr. Chairman. So did you want me to outline, or were you wanting to outline what we're proposing on those options?
Thank you, Councillor Bebb. I think I think all members of Cabinet will know, rather unusually this year, we've come to a Cabinet meeting without a formal resolution in front of us on the level of council tax. And as Councillor Bebb is very ably pointed out, that things have changed so quickly this year. I mean, it has been an extraordinary year. That the 680-odd thousand that came from government almost at the last moment, we felt that that was something we should take into consideration. And we did put the position to the Performance Management Board last week, to seek their views as to whether, given the situation at present and the impact upon our local residents of the impact of the COVID pandemic, as to whether we should, for this year, suggest that we do not go with our original thought of a 2% increase in council tax, but consider something lower, including holding our council tax at the current level. And so we will need members this evening to discuss that and actually come to a decision which will complete the list of recommendations that Councillor Bebb will be putting before us tonight. So I'm going to throw it open for discussion of people who have any views. I've got Councillor Cunningham's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Bebb. Yes, this is a budget unlike many others. It's been an extremely difficult time, and we are deciding this budget against a very difficult backdrop. The expectation upon us not only to maintain and if possible improve the high level of statutory services that we're obligated to provide as cost effectively and offering the best value for money to taxpayers remains, while supporting community resilience as we come out of this pandemic period, supporting economic recovery and helping our local economy bounce back stronger, as well as obligations to deal with the ongoing climate emergency. Means these are decisions taken against a very difficult backdrop. However, I think if we had thought at the beginning of this pandemic, back in March and April last year, that the extent to which this authority would receive financial support from central government to help deal with the issues faced by the authority during this COVID pandemic, I don't think we'd ever imagine they would be there to the extent that they were. Therefore, with all the challenges that are on not only our residents, but our local businesses, our local communities, I feel that having been given that support during this year, it's very difficult to make the ask of residents to help pay extra to build extra COVID resilience in the organisation when that support has been forthcoming. I don't think we can downplay the financial challenges that lie ahead, and we have to we approach those responsibly. I feel within the organisation we have got an approach to sound financial management, pushing forward with investments, how we generate additional revenue to help us best meet those challenges. Therefore, I would feel very comfortable and feel it is the right thing to do to propose a 0% tax increase on the Braintree District Council precept this year.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Any other member wishing to participate? Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chair. I clearly agree with every word that Councillor Cunningham has said. And I think it's only because we as an authority and led by our officers who've been famous for their prudent management of our finances, that we are not and never have been in a position where we are not able to meet our needs of our residents and also invest in the district. However, I think it's only fair that if the government is giving us providing £686,000 as an emergency funding, for us to take that very seriously and recognise that our residents in the coming year will have a tough time, and therefore I would support Councillor Cunningham's proposal of 0 tax increase for this year, and recognise that other authorities may not be in that position, but we are, and therefore we'll be able to recover our financial prudence in the 22, 23 and beyond, which will require some difficult decisions. But I think we're able to make that more than a gesture, that support of our residents right now in the teeth of a pandemic. So I would support the proposal for a 0 tax increase, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would echo the comments of my colleagues. I'm very conscious of the fact that if we do go for a nil increase, we do have a deficit, 1.65 million, which will have to be accounted for at some stage. I think, we are all, we all acknowledge that. However, in addition to the support that we have received from the government, which is significant, I think we also acknowledge that our residents have been through a particularly tough year, and the next 12 months are going to be equally tough. I don't think anybody's under the illusion that even when restrictions are relaxed, that everything is going to bounce back. We have many people who are struggling financially, and for me, it does feel the right thing to do to go for a nil increase. With the proviso, we need to make it clear to everybody this is very likely not something that we can repeat again next year or the year after, and there will have to be some very nifty budgeting done. But we are in a position, I feel, as Councillor McKee has said, we have been an extremely responsible council when it comes to managing our finances. So I think we are in a position to do this, and I would heartily support a nil increase this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sprague. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I support as well the zero council tax increase. I think some other councils, certainly what I've been reading, have been hiding behind the costs of COVID to try and justify increasing their council taxes this year. But I think all the way along, we've tended to assume that we wouldn't be getting any government support for the extra cost that we got with COVID. And the fact that it has come across so genuinely and generously, I think that this has given us an opportunity to share good, prudent management with, I was going to say government generosity. I don't really mean it in that way, but government support on that one. And I think it's only right that benefit should be shared out across the community.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Any other comments? Any members of the opposition groups? I got Councillor Abbott, then I come to Councillor Bowers. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome the balance of the budget in challenging times, and like others, acknowledge the government support that's been given, which, although it's not 100%, is nevertheless very generous. I agree that the 0% is the right approach. I consulted the members of the Green Independent Group, and we agree that on this occasion, and for the reasons others have given, the 0% council tax is the correct approach. Could I ask, please, one question? Sorry, a couple of other things. Welcome the continued investment in councillor community grants. I think that's a really good scheme, very popular. Could I ask one question, please, about New Homes Bonus? Chancing it here, I know, but I'll give it a go. I'm not going to return to the exact same subject because that will come up later this month. But would the leader consider some form of consultation with members about the priorities for spending the New Homes Bonus money? I think the council's approach has always been the correct one of allocating it for capital funding. Considering it's knocking on for £2 million now, could there be some form of consultation process where members and groups are asked about what their priorities might be for its spend? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I'll come back to that question in a moment. Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally agree with the comments that have been already said tonight in regards to the proposal of a zero increase on the council tax. From my personal point of view, these are challenging times, unique to all our lives, personally as well as jobs, livelihoods, and income for everyone. It is a challenging time, and we need to do all we can. And this is possible due to the prudent nature that the councillors and the officers have managed our finances over the preceding years. Yes, there is a health warning that going forward there is going to be financially challenges for all of us at this council, and we know that there's no doubt about that. However, we need to do what's right for our residents at this time. We need to do anything that's in our gift to support our residents for this challenge in this coming year, and I believe this is the right thing to do, and we have that ability to do it. So definitely, I support the proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chairman. I support what Councillor Abbott has said about the zero increase scenario. I think given the fact that the emergency fund allocation was unanticipated, and the fact that we're running at about triple the minimum that we would usually seek for unallocated balances, then it is absolutely right that we pass that on to local taxpayers.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Mrs. Pell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the other group leaders, my group also agrees with this, and I think that it was aired very well at the Performance Management Board, and I think if anybody had anything to say, then was the time, and it was clarified exactly what the position was. So I feel quite clear in my mind where we are.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No, I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, first of all, can I deal with the question that Councillor Abbott raised about new homes bonus? What I would say is I don't think it's a question of there's £2 million there and we haven't got a clue what to do with it. I mean, there are a number of ideas, but I'm quite happy for those ideas to be added to and put into the pot for consideration. So I hope that answers that, Councillor Abbott. Okay.
Yes, I mean, I don't think I suggested that we didn't have any idea what to spend it on. I'm sure, you know, and I'm aware there's lots of projects, but yes, that's welcome if we can make suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah, if they can be made in good time so that we can give full consideration to all potential uses of that, that would be very grateful. Then in terms of the actual budget, I mean, some very valid points have been made, but I would just like to make the point that clearly, if we go for no increase in council tax this year, we are increasing the tasks that we have over the next 4 years by, as Councillor Bev said, by about £200,000. So I don't want anybody to be in any doubt that yeah, there is a payday that has to come at some stage. I would like to see, in terms of the savings, that we try and level that more over the 3 years rather than try and go for a big bang in year one, etc. I think you know, we hopefully will have the opportunity to do that. I think that probably covers all the points that have been made. Oh, it was said that we have, Councillor Webb said we have prudent but not excessive reserves. I think, and I'll look to Trevor Wilson, that the recommended minimum for us would be somewhere in the region of 1.5 million. And we are roughly in the region of 4 million. Is that correct, Trevor?
That's correct, Leader.
But my view is that reserves are there for a rainy day. And my view is that we've had a bit of a monsoon. So if we aren't going to use them at some stage, then we never would. But we're not using it in a way which will leave us desperately short. And of course, part of that reason is, as Councillor Cunningham pointed out, due to the additional support that government has given to local government. I have no doubt that government will also be looking for a payday sometime in the future as well. But I think we are saying we are where we are at this moment. I will need a proper. Well, I think Councillor Cunningham moved that we had a 0% increase. Well, a freeze on BDC's element of the council tax. Is that formally seconded?
Second, Chairman.
Fine, seconded by Councillor Bowers. I'm assuming there are no amendments. I think it's a straightforward. So I'm going to put it to members of Cabinet, and I will explain for members of the public who are watching, only members of Cabinet can vote. Councillors Mann, Pell and Abbott are not able to vote, and therefore it shouldn't be taken that by not putting their hands up they are against. I think you've heard them all actually support the 0%. So can I formally have hands from those members of Cabinet who are in favour of a council tax increase of 0? Right, that is unanimous. Thank you. We'll then go formally, as Councillor Bebb pointed out, there are in fact 23 recommendations starting on page 11. Pages 11 to 12 cover the first 22, which are recommendations from Cabinet to full council, which will meet on the 22nd of February, is it? Whenever the full council meeting is. And there are recommendations there, which we will suitably amend recommendation 22 to be a recommendation to council that there be no increase in the council tax. And then there is a recommendation 23, which is at the top of page 13, that Cabinet agrees to delegate authority to the Cabinet member for finance and performance to agree requests for unspent budgets at the year end. So those are the recommendations, 1 to 23 on your papers on pages 11 to 13. Can I have a formal proposal that they be accepted? Councillor Bebb, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor McKee. Any amendments at all? No, in which case I'll take that silence as agreement. And that paper will, and those recommendations will now go forward to full council for approval or otherwise at the full council meeting. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to item 6 and 6A, the scrutiny reviews from full council. Members will be aware that we established 2 new scrutiny groups, a community and development group, which is chaired by Councillor Diana Garrod, and the Partnership Development Group, which is chaired by Councillor Mary Cunningham. And they have produced 3 scrutiny reports. I'm going to ask the 2 chairmen to briefly present their reports. I'll then ask the respective cabinet members to make a short review, and then we will move on to the fact that these will go, the reviews of the cabinet members will go to full council to enable all members to have a debate on the subject. So the first one I'll go to is Councillor Mrs. Garrod, who had her committee dealt with 2, one into community woodlands and one into childhood vaccinations. We'll take community woodlands first, if that's okay, Mrs. Garrod.
Yes.
Yes, all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Trees and woodlands are indeed a vital part of our environment and have many benefits for the community. The Community Development Group held a scrutiny review into community woodlands between October 2019 and February 2020. The council is responsible for 15 different woodland sites. The review included analysis into the background of community woodlands, both current and past examples, and the successes and challenges that had arisen. We identified policies and criteria that the council holds, including the current tree strategy, and discussed the impact on climate emissions and other ecological benefits. We also discussed both the costs associated with maintenance and the benefits to the community, whilst ensuring that there was no duplication of work being undertaken by the Climate Change Working Group. The group identified 13 recommendations arising from the review, and these are set out in Appendix A of your agenda. In particular, I would like to draw your attention to recommendation 11, which requests that the council produces a guide for town and parish councils and community groups who wish to set up a community woodland covering. I believe there is limited knowledge and a number of misconceptions held in respect of woodland provision, ownership and maintenance, and a written guide would be most welcome. We held 3 evidence gathering sessions, and I would like to convey my thanks to Mr. Sean Taylor from our Landscape Services team and Mr. Barry Fleet of the Witham Tree Group for their valued contribution to the scrutiny review. And I therefore present this report to Cabinet to receive and respond to recommendations before potentially going to full council in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Garrod. Before I ask Councillor Mrs. Smith to respond, are there any other comments anyone wishes to make? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, obviously welcome the report in broad terms. There's just a couple of things I wanted to pick up. One, a point of fact. It doesn't mention the Essex County Council Essex Forest Initiative. I mean, that obviously is more recent, so it might not have been picked up in the early stages, but I think that would be a good thing to do so. But the other thing that which, presumably we'll return to later on, although I would request the Cabinet member consider it now, is a little bit disappointed at recommendation 12, which basically says BDC hasn't really got much ambition to plant new community woodlands, but we're going to ask others to do so. As I've said before, I think it would be a fantastic thing if the District Council did take a lead on this, in addition to any woodlands that parish councils or groups or that came forward in local plan process. And I think, as we've just been talking in the earlier item about our capital position, we are in the position of reasonable amount of financial clout to be able to do it if we could acquire some land. So from my perspective, from the GNI Group's perspective, we would like to see if the council can find a way to progress some community woodlands with BDC as the lead. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Robert. I'm not seeing any other hands. I'm going to go to Councillor Mrs. Schmidt now. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mann, I do beg your pardon.
I did wonder, Chair, if there was any scope for sort of linking in with the changes that are taking place in national agricultural policy. As you know, farmers are being tasked to establish themselves new woodlands. The path to sustainable farming has several mentions of the need to increase carbon store. Now, I appreciate that their land at the moment is in private ownership, but their support is, financial support is going to be geared up, isn't it, to environmental improvements, things like sort of hedgerows and woodland. And so when we further consider this, that might be an avenue to explore.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I think I now go to Councillor Mrs. Schmidt. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Mrs. Garrett and her subgroup for the in-depth work that they have done on what is, as you well know, one of my favourite subjects. I was well aware of Mrs. Garrett's deep interest in the natural world and the environment, which is why I asked her to be a member of the Climate Change Committee, because these two things really go hand in glove. They are part and parcel of the same thing. As you know, I could speak for England on the subject, but I'll restrain myself because I'm glad that we will be having a bigger debate on the matter. But what I would really like to say is that it is part of climate change. Both Councillor Mann has just put his finger on it, very much so. It's not something that we as Braintree District Council can do in isolation. It's something that we have to do with partners. But we do have a good tradition. For the last 17 years, we haven't waited for there to be climate emergencies or anything. We have been planting trees consistently in the last 17 years. And of course, shrubs too. They are just as important. They fulfill the similar role as trees. And so it is not something new for us. It's something that we have been doing, as I said, for the last 17 years, and it will be a continuation. And so I very much look forward to it being discussed in more depth, along with our climate change paper, which will also be being discussed by members. I will restrain myself, Leader, and leave it at that. Thank you very much. But again, great thanks to the enthusiasm of Councillor Mrs. Garrett's group. It's nice to know I'm not alone.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Schmidt. As Mrs. Schmidt points out, we're changing the way in which we deal with these reports. We normally have had a written sort of response from the Cabinet member within 3 months. As part of what we want to do is to enhance the role of the scrutiny committees. The portfolio holder will respond to these, but that report will go direct to council, because these scrutiny committees are committees of council, not committees of cabinet. And we think that is the appropriate place for that to go back. And then that enables all members to engage in a wider debate on the issue. So thank you for that, Councillor Mrs. Smith. I now move on to the second report, which is on childhood vaccinations. And again is Councillor Mrs. Garrett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2019, the Community Development Group held its first topic, a scrutiny review into childhood vaccinations in the Braintree district, in response to a national movement to increase the uptake of childhood vaccinations, particularly for diseases such as measles and rubella. So I would just like to make it clear that this review was concluded prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and should not be confused with current interest surrounding vaccinations for the coronavirus. Details of the report are shown in Appendix B of your agenda. The group identified who is responsible for managing and overseeing the vaccination programme in the Braintree district, and to see what vaccinations and diseases are covered by the normal programme. We looked at many facts and figures, and crucially, we analysed the rates of vaccination in comparison to Essex and the national averages. The group found that the data provided indicated that the level of vaccination uptake were in alignment with the rates for Mid-Essex and were also slightly above that for the national average. The group agreed that the data was both positive and reassuring for the district, and it indicated that the World Health Organization's target of 95% was being achieved across most areas of the district and did not appear to have any major issues regarding the rates of vaccination uptake. So the group was satisfied that there did not appear to be any major issues regarding the uptake within the district, and therefore concluded that there was no scope to make any further recommendations to Cabinet or any of its partners as a result of our findings. So I'd like to convey my thanks to Mr. Mike Dougherty, Director of Wellbeing for Public Health and Communities at Essex County Council, and the clinical leads and officers of NHS England, the East of England branch. And I therefore look forward to receiving a response from Cabinet in due course before going to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Garrett. Again, before I go to the Cabinet member, Councillor Tattersley, are there any other comments any other members of the committee wish to make, or other members who are here? No. I'll go to Councillor Tattersley then, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We tend to say the same words about the various scrutiny groups that meet. But I have to say, I think they're a credit to the council. The commitment of the investigation, I think, is absolutely creditable. And the stuff that comes out of this, I think, is a lesson for all of us, not just the members of the group, but for the Cabinet and the report, the subsequent report that we'll be actually doing. I've got a couple of more congratulations, if I might. Firstly, for attracting eminent, knowledgeable representatives to give evidence. The fact that you got Mike Dougherty, I think, who's now beginning to be one of the most respected directors of public health across the country, and he's been correct all the way through on this pandemic. And I think that he would have welcomed the discussion, but I think there's a lot of credit for managing to get that person here. Secondly, I think it's excellent that we're very clear about the findings. The fact that you're brave enough to say that you don't think there's much more to go on that one actually is symptomatic of a group that actually understands what they're doing and are able to enumerate that in the report. And then thirdly, just to the chair of the group for agreeing to be clear in the introduction to all the reports about the fact that the investigation into vaccines went before this current pandemic happened. So anybody reading it, I don't think should assume that when the recommendation is that there's no need to explore the topic any further, it shouldn't give an impression that we're entirely happy the way that the vaccine rollout have happened this time, although I have to say it does seem to be working an awful lot better. So I look forward to putting some comments, although bearing in mind that you didn't think it was necessary to continue exploring the topic. I think that'll be more of a challenge for me than it will be for you.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. I move on to the third report, which is the scrutiny review into leisure provision and access to sport, which was carried out by the Partnership Development Group under the chairmanship and leadership of Councillor Mary Cunningham. Councillor Mary Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to introduce this report to Cabinet this evening. One of the key aims of the Partnership Development Scrutiny Review was to identify what the picture of sports provision within the Braintree district looked like. As part of the review into leisure provision and access to sport, some of the key questions we wanted to address were the picture of sports availability, what partnerships there are to support groups, what involvement does the council have directly through Fusion, what is the accessibility of facilities for groups, and what impact can the council have with partners to support groups. We looked at partnerships that the council are involved with relating to leisure and sport provision. These include Active Braintree Foundation. We received presentations from Joby Hum, BDC Leisure and Heritage Manager, John Wood, Chairman of the Active Braintree Foundation. We had a presentation from Councillor Mrs Hooks, Chairman of Rain Parish, who spoke to us regarding sport and leisure provision in the village of Rain. We also had presentations from officers from BDC Planning, who gave us an insight into Section 106 contributions from new developments and how they relate to sports and leisure provision. A detailed survey was sent to parish and town councils to identify the sports provision in each particular ward. We were very grateful that a good number and a cross-section of parishes in the district responded with some very useful and helpful information. And the results of the Community Assets Survey was shared with members by Moira Groberts of Community Services. We had some excellent conversations during these fact-finding meetings and are very grateful to all those who gave their time and in turn helped us with contributions to prepare the report. We identified that there is a lot on offer and it's a case of communicating well what's available in the district. And as members, we can play a significant role in helping to communicate what's available. I'd like to offer my thanks to all those who contributed to our evidence gathering, the members of the committee who I have to say engaged with great enthusiasm, and to the officers, especially Jessica Mann, who sourced our contributors and prepared the report before you tonight. I would just like to point out that the review was carried out prior to the pandemic and the report completed as the first lockdown was beginning. And as a committee, we consider all the recommendations to be of equal importance, but there is one which I would particularly like to flag up as a priority since the pandemic. That is recommendation 2, which is why only, in response to why only 12 of the district's 52 primary schools participate in the Daily Mile. A number of children for the best part of a year may not have had the best access to open space and exercise. And when schools do get back, we hope that this recommendation is a priority to increase the number of schools that participate for the children's physical, mental and general well-being. I present this report to Cabinet and look forward to the portfolio holder's response. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Cunningham. Before I go to Councillor Tattersley, are there any other comments any members wish to make? Councillor Mrs Pell.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Mary Cunningham on her leadership, because it wasn't easy for her because she lost her vice chairman halfway through the project, which meant she didn't have a prop to lean up on because you usually work together as a pair. So she did exceedingly well, and I think we ought to congratulate her.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Mrs Pell. Any other contributions? Not seeing any, so I'll go to Councillor Tattersley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Another thorough and very well thought out and sensible approach to this, with lots of recommendations that I think are fascinating. I think I have to say that the residents in our district have an excellent record in sporting achievement with some national successes, whether it's the Martial Arts Centre and the BMX Club to the various Live Well successes, the park run, the school obesity activities, loneliness, learning to swim. All these are supported by the facilities provided by the council. And I think we're extremely lucky that we've got leisure centres in all three major towns. And I have no doubt at all, if the council continues to put resources into providing new and improved facilities, we will be getting even more world champions and successes nationally. I was particularly interested in the comments from the planning officers, and I think that that's going to be something that I'll need to investigate with the cabinet member for planning about the use of industrial sites for sporting activities, because of all the correspondence that I get about sporting activities in Braintree, that seems to be the one that generates most of the interest. Most of the suggestions are from the group are relatively straightforward to promote, and I think that I need to investigate some of the recommendations with the officers to see whether there are any financial implications in that which might need to be built into future budget proposals. But all in all, a really smashing report that I've enjoyed reading and I look forward to responding to.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Right, there are recommendations, members, on page 6. First of all, to formally, obviously, receive the 3 reports and to agree which cabinet member will be providing the full and detailed response, and to agree, in line with our new approach, that cabinet responses to the scrutiny reviews will be reported direct to full council at the earliest opportunity. And we are, I think, trying to get them done by June at the latest. I think I want to try and keep as close to the 3 months as possible, but clearly there are some other matters which come in at the beginning of May which might just slightly hold things up. But we will get those done and get them to full meetings of the council. Are you happy to accept the recommendations as put before you? Agreed? Thank you very much. And can I thank both Councillor Mrs. Garrett and Councillor Mrs. Cunningham, not just for coming here tonight, but for the way in which you I think, have delivered, and with your groups, of course, delivered really good reports, which is something which is most encouraging and is also one of the reasons why we're looking to put more resources to the scrutiny function as well, to enable further reports of this standard to come forward. So thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, we'll move on to item 7 under the Health and Wellbeing banner, 7A, new artificial grass pitch facility at Halstead Leisure Centre. And this again, I think, is Councillor Tattersley, and you'll find the report starts on page 31 of your agenda.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is the council's ongoing commitment towards sporting, to providing and maintaining sporting facilities. The all-weather pitch at Halstead Leisure Centre is in a sorry state at the moment, and it's got worse with it not being used very much. And I think that it will really benefit for everybody that lives and uses that facility for an awful long time. Having said that, the cost is huge. Over £750,000, and officers have put in an awful lot of work in attracting grant applications, and all the many hoops that putting in grant applications these days entail. But they have won quite a big grant from the Football Foundation, £543,000, and together with some Section 106 agreements, and they've been listed in the report. And I think that that's been quite a good idea, because it actually demonstrates that some of the developments that have gone on with additional housing, it shows that they've gone towards funding a community facility, which I think is a creditable thing to do, and one that I hope that we continue to provide on that one. After we've got the 106 agreements, 164,000, add that to the Football Foundation's money, this just leaves the capital programme of a deficit of around £45,000. Now, the purpose of this report is to confirm to the Football Foundation that the council is contributing 30% to the project. And of course, this report, if approved, Mr. Chairman, will actually provide that that assurance. And the recommendation is that we note the grant, we note that there is a 30% contribution from section 106 agreements, and that there is an allocation from the capital reserve of 45,000, and that we award the contract to a company called Tiger Turf UK for the total amount of the work of just over 700,000, and I actually move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Tattersley. Open for comments and questions. Councillor Mrs. Pell, I expected you to be in like a jackrabbit there, yes?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say thank you very much to Braintree District Council to going to provide this facility. It's a much used facility, even on the old pitch when they were allowed to use it. I actually have family members that use it and do appreciate it. And I think this will be a great asset to Halstead's young people and our older ones as well, because we have the adult walk-in football group. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs. Pell. Any other comments at all? I may have missed it, Councillor Tash. Do we know when this might be completed?
No, not really, because an awful lot depends on whether we can get the furloughed staff from Fusion to provide an input into this one. But I'll see if I can't put an estimate in my Cabinet Member report to Council on when we expect that might be.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? If not, does Cabinet agree the recommendations at the bottom of page 31? Recommendations 1A, B, 2 and 3. Can I have a show of hands if you are in favour? Thank you very much. Right, that is unanimous. We move then on to item 8, which is Cabinet Member decisions that have been made under delegated powers. To note those, they are on page 37 of your agenda and involve 2 decisions that have been taken by Councillor McKee. As I say, just to note those delegated decisions. Noted? Yep, thank you very much. That, I think, members, brings us to the end of the agenda. There is no part 2 or private session of the committee. And so without more ado, I will formally declare the meeting closed at 11 minutes past 8 by my reckoning. Thank you very much indeed, and good night to you. And I'll hand back to Emma to guide us safely home.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, before we terminate the broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, please can I remind you that we will retain performance data to your connections to this meeting this evening. This is retained in the event that we have a legal challenge. Members, thank you very much for your attendance this evening. Please can the webcasting officer confirm that the broadcast